Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Humanities Festival and to this conversation about power of art to resist oppression with Marina Davydova. I'm particularly pleased to welcome her to Vienna. Marina Davydova is a well-known Russian theater critic. First of all, she's editor-in-chief of the theater magazine, the Russian theater magazine. She's founder and artistic director of the New European Theater Festival in Moscow. We will be talking about Kirill Serebrennikov a lot in this next hour, and she was one of the people who worked with him in the Gogol Center. Last but not least, Marina is also a theater creator, something that probably even the Viennese public who knows her as a theater artistic director for the Wiener Festwochen. She did the program of Wiener Festwochen in 2016. And just after that, she started doing her theater creations. Her performance, produced by Hebel am Ufer in Berlin, just received a very important prize at the Bitte Festival in Belgrade. So welcome. We're very pleased to have you here. Today we are going to discuss a topic that is perhaps as old as art itself, and this is the relation between political power and art. Well, art has this function to be a sort of a barometer of society. It is always through art that society learns about itself, learns about where it is going. But this is also why very often art is uncomfortable for a certain type of power and certain type of regimes. But it seems to me that the way power defines its relation to art often tells us something about the nature of the regimes themselves. In the case of Russia, there is a long history of oppression against artists, writers, etc., dating back to Tsarist times. Think of Dostoevsky. Soviet times. Think of Gulag and Solzhenitsyn. And until today, unfortunately. And if there is one paradigmatic case of artistic oppression in Russia today, this is the case of Kirill Serebrennikov. Kirill Serebrennikov is a theater director whom some of you might have seen his productions also in the framework of the Wiener Festwochen 3 years ago, I think.
It's in 2015.
Yeah, in 2015. Just to say a few words of him, he is one of the most innovative and interesting young theater directors in Russia who, in 2009, was entrusted to create a platform which is supposed to innovate Russian theater. This was the Medvedev times, and there was this wind of change in the air at that point, and he was the one who decided to create this platform where a lot of artists would create innovative art and will experiment. And this was back in 2009. Last year, 2017, he was put under house arrest, and he's still under house arrest.
Yeah.
So basically, from main innovator, he became main prisoner of Russian theater. But let us start with setting the scene, Marina. I would like us first to, for those who do not know the details, tell us a little bit about who is Kirill Serebrennikov, what is his place in the contemporary Russian performing arts scene, what were the accusations against him. Just to set up a scene, what are the other main characters in this story that we're going to look at?
Actually, Kirill now is not just a director, of course. He is a kind of symbolical figure of new Russian theater, and Kirill Serebrennikov's case is kind of lens or prisms through which you can look at all the political, economical, even aesthetical problems of modern Russia. The case started in May 17 when people in masks they surrounded Gogol Center. They raided it, and all the actors they took the cell phones from all the actors and they were not allowed to leave the building, and it lasted for the whole day. And everybody in Gogol Center and in the whole theater world were absolutely frightened. Because people who...
Just to say that the Gogol Center is Kirill Serebrenikov's theatrical home.
It's a theater which Kirill founded in 2013. And people which were just working or were next to Gogol Center, they decided that it's like a bomb alert, that it's a kind of terrorism. So already that time, in May 17, everybody understood that it's not just a normal case of embezzlement, but it's a case which had to frighten all the people of theater world. It's not so easy to answer why Kirill became the main victim of all this process, but I try to do it. There is the simple answer for a question why it happened with Kirill Serebrennikov and his theater. You know maybe that the main figure of our opposition, the politician named Alexei Navalny, he started like crusade against corruption in the high echelons of Russian authority about some years ago. And our officials on all the levels, they like very much to give like mirror-like answer. For example, if people gathered on the squares, meetings against something wrong in political life, so immediately other meetings named Putins. So it's people who are supporting Putin, meetings against Putin. So they will be arranged, and a lot of people will be forced to come to these Putins. If somebody started, made disclosures in our authorities, so blaming them in corruption, so immediately they need to find somebody, a symbolical figure in liberal, opposition milieu to blame also for corruption or for embezzlement, doesn't matter. And it was a kind of mirror-like answer to Navalny's exposures, to my mind. It's the first thing. Another thing is, of course, that actually Dessy already mentioned it, and I totally agree, that about 8 years ago, when the project platform started, and you have to understand that this Gogol Center was established, founded in 2013, and before it, during 3 years, Kirill was running very special project which he named Platform, and they were it was project not only about contemporary theater, but about contemporary music, contemporary dance, multimedia, and there were a lot of exhibitions and so on and so on. It was a huge project which he started in 2011, actually, not 9, but doesn't matter. And he started it when Dmitry Medvedev was our president. A lot of people in Russia and in Western countries think that there was no such a thing like Medvedev as a president, that he was just a special representative on the throne instead of Putin, which is true. But at the same time, during his term, these 4 years between 2008 and 2012, we lived in a bit different country, because Medvedev he declared openly that he wanted to make westernization and modernization of all the aspects of Russian life, including economical, political, educational aspects, and so on and so on and so on. He made liberalization of business legislation. He replaced 2 years in the army for 1 year. He changed our educational system, and it became very close to Western educational system, and he made a lot of things. And then he decided that he needs to do something for art field. It was like a natural continuation of this modernization trend. I've heard that there is such a myth that Kirill, he with a hat in his hands, he came up to some officials and asked money for this platform to make that big, huge project about contemporary art. But that's not true. The paradox is that time the officials themselves came up to him and asked him to make something, a kind of modernization in our artistic field, because, and it's also a very important thing, that theater is a very conservative structure in Russia. We have practically all our theaters are state theaters. They are dependent on the state budget. It's a huge, big buildings with a permanent team, and it's so difficult to change anything in all our theaters. And it's not so easy to find a person who will be responsible for modernization in our theater, because it's really very, very dangerous. It was that time.
But just one question. I think it was not the platform was not the only project like this. No. At that time there was the PERM project, the so-called PERM cultural revolution, so to say. Another project for modernization of the Russian culture.
It was mostly about contemporary art, because as for theater, it's also started later. But it's why I underlined it, that in theater it wasn't so easy to find the right person for modernization. And Kirill was a unique person. Why? He, maybe I have to say some words about his biography, or maybe...
Tell us about his place in the Russian theater context.
Just some words about him. He was born in Rostov-on-Don. It's a provincial city, and he graduated from the Rostov-on-Don University Department of Physics and Mathematics, and he with honors. So he's a very good mathematician, but he never graduated from a theater institute. For Western context, for Austria, for Germany, or for France, it doesn't matter. You know, I know a lot of directors which never studied in theater institutes. But in Russia, it's a very specific thing. In Russia, this diploma of theater directing is a kind of fetish. And if you don't have it, you are not a director, you're a dilettante. So he never graduated from such an institute. He first started to be a filmmaker. He made a lot of documentary films, and he even got an award as a filmmaker first. And then he came to Moscow. And in Moscow that time, the situation in theater was not so good. Mostly the theaters, they had nothing to do with new writing. They even cannot imagine that they stage a new play on somewhere, especially in big theaters. You can only find in the program the classical things like Molière, Chekhov, Ibsen, and so on. But there was some attempts to do it in the small stages. And there was such a guy which was running a very special partly independent institution, Center of Dramaturgy and something else. And he was looking at a director who will stage Vasily Sigorev's play Plasticine. Vasily Sigorev is also a very famous Russian playwright and film director, and he wrote such a play. It's a play about, very depressive provincial Russian city, about a teenager which lives in such a city, and there are a lot of obscene episodes, a lot of very physiological things, and Russian stage is very chaste, Normally directors, they cannot even imagine that they can stage such physiological thing on the stage. And all the directors just refused to do it. But Serebrennikov, he was not a normal director. And he said, yes,
he was a dilettante after all.
Yes, I can do it easily. I can stage this contemporary, like new writing. And maybe we can even now can see the small episode from, it was his first performance staged in Moscow, Plasticine. And it is episode when two teenagers, it's in a play, two teenagers, they came to cinema to see adult movie, and it's a very he's watching something very erotical, and he in a remark we can read that they're joking off, they're joking in cinema, and how can we present it on the stage? And Serebrennikov easily did all these things. So if you can start with like 2050, I would say.
Я там заведую.
Понимаю я. Зачем мальчику жизнь ломать? Хороший мальчик.
for 2001, it was something absolutely unbelievable in Russian context.
Yeah, so I think we got an idea about Kirill Serebrennikov, the theater innovator and the very talented theater director. But tell us about Kirill Serebrennikov, the prisoner now. So what are the accusations? What is the story with this house arrest that he is in already for a year? And it's not only him, so tell us about that.
Its accusation is very Kafkian because he is charged in stealing all the money which state gave him and his team for this project platform. But all of us, I mean, all the critics know, and as an editor-in-chief, I made a special issue of my journal devoted to this platform, and we counted that there were, during 3 years, there were 80 original, we just found 80 original posters about 80 original events. Can you imagine during 3 years, which happened on this platform? Normal theater can do not more than in Russia 3 premieres during a season, but there were so many events, and you can read articles about it. But for example, when during the court hearing, the investigative committee, the investigators, they tried to prove that there was not such a performance like Midsummer Night Dream, for example. There was such a performance on platform. It's very, very famous performance. And the paradox is that until now you can see it, because now you can see it in Gogol Center. It was staged in 2012, but until now it exists.
And the accusation is that it was not produced.
They never did such a performance. Okay, answered the lawyer, and she brought a lot of reviews about this performance. And the decision was, okay, but it doesn't prove that performance was really staged, because maybe this guy just commissioned these reviews to a lot of critics and they wrote it, but they performed. How can you prove that you really did such a performance? It's, if I was a playwright, I couldn't invent such absurd things. So the accusation is that he stole all the money, and all the attempts to prove that there were really these events, they don't help us at the moment. Why they can do it? There are a lot of things. First of all, our system, this financial system for theater, financial legislation for theater, is made in such absurd way that if the manager would follow all the letters of the law, he would never buy even toilet paper for the theater. Not mentioning the costume, set design, and so on and so on. So all the managers in all the theaters, all over the country, all of them, we know it for sure, they have to break some rules. Otherwise, they don't do anything at all. And it means that to all of them, any day, can come these investigators and start a process. And only our authority can decide to whom they have to come or not. And you know that this, Russia is a very hypocritical country. All the officials on all the levels, they will repeat as a mantra that we haven't got censorship in Russia. And that's true. Formally speaking, we haven't got any censorship. Everybody can do everything, everybody can write everything. But one day, to your manager. For example, I'm an artistic director of Net Festival. I never sign any financial documents, but my manager, I have a executive director. He signs a lot of them. So I know, as an artistic director, I know that if I do something wrong, not me, but this guy will go to prison. And can you imagine what is it? It's even worse than during Soviet time. But during Soviet time, for example, Yuri Lyubimov, he staged the performance, and some officials came and said to him, look, you have to cancel this third episode in the performance. You have to cut some things, this red banner to remove from the performance, and then you can do, or your performance is forbidden. So he took a risk with his performance and himself, not more. But now, and even me, I think I'm a rather brave person, but when I know that not only me, but somebody else can be under risk, so I will think twice if I'd like to do something.
In the case of Kirill Serebrennikov, there was also another person being imprisoned, and this is the manager of his Gogol Center, right? Malobrodsky. In order to understand better the mechanics of this oppression, can you tell us a little bit about his case?
Not only Malobrodsky, there are 6 other people, which 5 of them are arrested, and one woman, she was abroad when this process started, so she just never came back to Moscow. And one of these people is Sonia Apfelbaum. She is former official from Minister of Culture. It's also a very interesting thing. She also arrested. Just it was special agreement between her, Serebrennikov, and so on. And another guy is Alexei Malobrodsky, which is a real hero of this process, because he was arrested practically by chance. He worked for Platform for 3 or 4 months. Practically he had nothing to do with this project, but then he became a general manager of Gogol Center, and he was running it during 3 years. Then they had quarrel with Kirill, and it's very good thing for our investigative committee, because how they work. They need to have any evidences that there was something. So they arrested this Malobrodsky, and being absolutely sure that he will witness against Kirill because their relationship were not so good. And now he is a prisoner, and he immediately refused to do it. And he is really a very tough guy. And they didn't expect he would be so tough. They were absolutely sure that the case will be very easy for them. Now it's not so easy, but anyway, it doesn't mean anything, because they can do what they really want to do. You know, there is no such a thing like independent court in Russia. There is no such thing. A judge, she or he, they have the decision about hearing just before it started. It's normal. It's normal practice for Russia. But anyway, there is such a guy. I'd like just you to know this name, because he just by chance he became a figurant of this case, and now he's also he was in prison for 8 months, and he practically it could be another Sergei Magnitsky's case. He nearly died in our prison, and at the very last moment we did a lot to release him, and now he is also under house arrest.
Before the start of the last theatrical season last year, you made this appeal to the theaters in Russia not to start the season in a normal celebrative way, but somehow show solidarity with Kirill Serebrennikov. What was the effect of this initiative of yours? And in general, what can civil society do in Russia nowadays in order to help people like Kirill Serebrennikov?
You know, there is civil society and there is theater community. it's two bit different things. Because a lot of people supported me, and really they tried to do, and they come to they attend court hearings, which are a lot of them during a year. They write letters, petitions, and so on. But mostly, they are not directors, set designers, even actors. They are critics, intellectuals, sometimes politicians from opposition side. As for theater community, it's another case. You know, I told it already that theaters are dependent on the state in Russia. Even if you independent, you think that you are independent, you are anyway are dependent. Even if you don't get 1 ruble from the state, but there is practically no such theaters without such a special subsidy. But anyway, you need to rent a building, and this building, even if doesn't belong to the state, but there is such things as running water, electricity, heating, and so on. And any day, they can just stop running water, canalization in your building. Everything belongs to the state. So if you want to run your theater business, you need to be very shy. You see? So it's a real, very, very special censorship. So theater people, they really were afraid to make statements against this process. Some of them did it, but normally they did it not openly, but with coming up to, there were some very famous actors, for example, coming up to Putin in couloirs and asking for Kirill. It's the way how they dealing with this thing.
Do you have a hypothesis? Why are they doing this? Is this Putin who is doing it? Is it another level of power? And what is the message that they want to send, and to whom?
I'm not sure. It's really a question for me. I'm not sure that they have, when it started, they had a special goal. Of course, as a result of it, we have a community which is very frightened, and we have such a phenomenon as self-censorship, as I already tried to tell you. When actually they even don't need to start another case like Serebrenikov's case. The one case is enough, you know, to make this self-censorship thing. I know it because of my own performance, because when I made it in Berlin, and it was very successful, so some Russian institutions started to negotiate with Hebeler about touring this performance to Moscow and to St. Petersburg. And during these negotiations, Malobrodsky and Serebrennikov were arrested. And so the negotiation immediately stopped. Immediately. You know? It's how it works.
So why are they
why? Yeah.
To send the message?
Yes. So the simplest message is just be afraid of doing something wrong. And if you want to continue your theater works, you cannot be part of the opposition. You cannot, and you have to understand the Gogol Center, which Kirill founded. It was not just a theater. It was very special theater. With the activity was there during 24 hours. Not only performances, but a lot of round tables, discussions, lectures, and it was practically a special venue for our opposition, liberal opposition people. Mm-hmm. So if you want to live like this, something, another embezzlement will be found in your theater and so on. It's very obvious. But I am personally, I'm not sure that, for example, Putin, I think he even didn't know such a name that time. Somebody on another level started it. I suppose that it's our Minister of Culture, which is now a real center of Russian fascism, Russian semi-fascism, you can call it as you wish, but it's a center of the very conservative forces. Our Minister of Culture, the officials from in there, on the one hand, they are connected to the very right wing of Russian Orthodox Church, and on the other hand, with the very right wing of FSB. Because in FSB, there's also there is such a thing like right wing of FSB. And they hated all these new trends in our cultural life and theater, not only, of course, Gogol Center and Kirill, and they tried to close my journal, for example. There were a lot of, they tried to kill our very famous festival, the Golden Mask. It's now, maybe you even know, it's the main Russian theater festival and competition. But as for Gogol Center, they hated it maybe more than something else. And I think that these conservative people, but I cannot name them, and nobody can do it at the moment, they initiated, they launched this process.
And before we open the floor for your questions, and because our title is The Power of Art to Resist Oppression, there is this fascinating story for me that while Kirill Serebrennikov is under arrest, he managed to produce a premiere of several performances. So in September 2017, this was a month after he was arrested, there was Pushkin's Little Tragedies, which premiered, and Gogol Center. Then later on, there was this fascinating ballet, Nureyev, which premiered in Bolshoi Theater, directed by a prisoner under house arrest, on which premiere the whole political elite and cultural elite was present, and it was met with a huge acclaim. Such a paradox. Tell us about this.
First, yes, I have to say that if I were a Hollywood filmmaker, I would made a film about Kirill, because can you imagine that a person under house arrest made a premiere in Gogol Center, a dramatic premiere. Then in Stuttgart, there was another premiere of his opera production, Hansel and Gretel. Then in Bolshoi Theater was a huge ballet named Nureyev, and then he finished his movie, Summer, Leto, which was selected for Festival du Cannes, and it was included in the main program of Festival du Cannes. He made all these things being under house arrest. It's a secret information, but I think that it's possible to tell it here. First of all, do you know what is house arrest means in Russia? It means that you cannot communicate with anybody in the world, only with your lawyer, and Kirill can communicate with his very old father. By the way, his mother died during this year when he was under house arrest because she couldn't live with it. And as for the Little Tragedies, Kirill started to rehearse it in May 17, and he practically finished it, but he decided to continue it in September. It's a normal process. Like in the beginning of season, we'll continue our rehearsals for 15 days, and in the middle of September, there will be premiere. But in the very end of August, he was arrested. So when he was arrested, he can make one call. He called to the theater, and he asked, please, I ask you, I'm arrested now. Please, you have to finish my work, these Little Tragedies. And all the actors which love him, like he said, the God for them, he said, yes, we will do it. And then he made 1,000 of remarks about what to do in, like during this third minute. This actor Kukushkin, he has to stay 3 meters left from the meters far from the left wing, and stretching his hand to act somebody to say such words, and there should be such a soundtrack at this moment. They got from him secretly through his lawyer these notes, like it's a little pile of papers. And they try to rehearse according to this. It's a Hollywood movie, and sometimes they try to understand. I think that our master meant that we have to, like this. Then they secretly, with his lawyers, he gave him the video of the rehearsals, and he made another 1,000 notes to this. And during 15 days, he made such a. He finished the performance, and I have to say that it's, first of all, it was one of his best performances, and it's one of the best performances in Russian theater at the moment, and maybe not only in Russian. It's really brilliant, absolutely brilliant thing. As for Nureyev, it was another story, because it was ready in July 17, and it was supposed to be premiered in the middle of July, but it was already obvious that something wrong about Kirill, and the general manager of Bolshoi Theater, he decided to cancel the premiere. A lot of foreigners, a lot of foreign journalists, producers, and so on, because it's a performance about big Russian ballet star, Rudolf Nureyev. They were going to come to Moscow for the premiere, and suddenly it was cancelled. But then in December, so practically in half a year, when Kirill was already under house arrest, they decided to have it in Bolshoi. Why? You never know, actually. But I think that it's a kind of mockery, because can you imagine this general manager of Bolshoi, Vladimir Urin, he asked investigative committee, please let me bring Kirill at least for one rehearsal of this Nureyev, because about 600 people are involved in it, including all the musicians, dancers, performers, and a lot of it's a huge performance. And how can I perform it if we haven't got even one rehearsal? So, without a director. But the investigative committee, they didn't allow to come for Kirill to come for the rehearsals. In the end, there was a premiere, really, and a lot of people from these high levels of our authorities, of course, came to see it. And it doesn't mean that it's a freedom of something. No, it's really mockery, because just in a week, or maybe in 10 days, there was a meeting of Putin and some cultural representatives, people from cultural field, and one of them, he asked Putin why we still have Kirill under house arrest, and he said, but it has nothing to do with his art. Even a week ago, you could see the Nureyev in Bolshoi. It has nothing to do with his art, only with financial misuse of money. So it's so hypocritical, and they are lying all the time, so you cannot catch them.
Yeah. So I turn the floor to you and to your questions after we try to present you the story of Kirill Serebrennikov, which moves between, as we heard, theater and absurd and Hollywood movie, and at the same time really shows probably the best case showing the power of art really to resist oppression. But please raise your hands if you have a question, and the microphone will go to you.
I would like to know if is it possible to say in a general way, not only in this specific case, would you say if an artist from Russia is invited to the Western world, to Western Europe or to America, wherever, he would have a better chance to be treated in a more appropriate way, or wouldn't it help at all?
Yes, it's a very general question. I don't know. I cannot say that. Of course, as for me, I'm treated in a better way, because I cannot imagine that, for example, me, I could make my performance in Russia. I made it in Germany, and then I'm going to make another my performance also in Germany. But it depends. There are a lot of directors in Russia which are absolutely happy with the situation, because they are doing the right art. Because, you know, our aesthetic, our political issues are so in such a complicated way, they are connected to aesthetical ones. Sometimes if you do wrong art, you even don't need to make any special political statements. You are an enemy because of your art, because you did it in a wrong way. Just remember Merhold. Why he was arrested? Just imagine, he was absolutely, was a Bolshevik. He has even a gun with him. Sometimes he has it with him, and he openly supported Bolsheviks after the revolution. Unlike Konstantin Stanislavski, he has never supported Bolsheviks. But Stanislavski was made by Stalin an icon of Russian theater. But Merhold was arrested and then killed. Because for Stalin, this aesthetical aspect was even more important sometimes than political one.
But so, the way I understood your question is that whether international recognition of a theater director would help him not to be prosecuted in the way.
It was a question. Oh, okay.
But yeah, Kirill Serebrennikov was here in Vienna. He was quite internationally recognized.
He was absolutely internationally acclaimed. But as I told, they needed a symbolical figure. So this is a fact that he was internationally acclaimed was also very important. It should be a person with well known not only in Russia but.
So in a way, it's just the opposite. You're saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't help, but rather harm. Further questions? Show. Raise your hand if you have some.
Under such circumstances, is there any way emotionally to survive, or is it just a question when to leave?
For him, for Kirill, it's a good question, of course. For me, fortunately, I can travel and. Yes, I feel all the time. I feel this special pressure, and it's not so easy to live as if there's not this. It's not dangerous for me to write my articles, to run my journal. Of course, I understand it, but yes, I used to it already. Yes, frankly speaking. But as for Kirill, I have to say that he's a real Buddhist. It's not just words. He's practicing it. He can meditation and so on, and it helps him.
Thank you very much. This was really very interesting and revealing what you told about the present situation in Russia. But nevertheless, I would like to ask once more, why does the Putin regime needs this? I don't understand.
To be honest, I sometimes also don't understand. And but not all these things in this dictatorship situation can be explained in a rational way. Just remember about this Nazi time. Why Hitler needed to kill all the Jewish people? Can you answer this question? Yes. It's a kind of irrational thing. It's a kind of irrational thing. And sometimes I see that some events in our life I cannot explain in a rational way, but I know that it's a very strong hatred. This conservative part of our society, sometimes I had a chance to communicate with these people, which told me about how awful is Kirill, his art, his Gogol Center, and so on. And I asked them, have you ever been to Gogol Center? Have you seen any performance there? No, never. Do you know personally Kirill? No. Why do you hate his art if you have never seen any? It's just they hate it, but it's real hatred. You know, it's not an imitation. I just can feel it, and I'm absolutely sure. I know that it's like a wrong answer, because everybody wants. I made like very simple and rational answer, but I think that the starting point for all these things is this irrational hatred to all the modernization trends in our life. All the attempts, and actually what happened with Kirill was a kind of backlash of this attempt of modernization of this art field and so on. Another thing is that not only our officials, our politicians, but even in the theater community, you can find a lot of people which hated him because he tried to do such, he broke all the unwritten Russian theater laws, you know? So it's really complicated situation. We can't find a conservative trend not only on this high level of authorities, but in all the social stratas, in theater, in educational system, in everywhere. And it's real problem of our society.
Thank you. I find it interesting how you defined what is right in art. That state kind of defining it in. But state is also something that is not static; it's changing. So I myself, coming from a post-Soviet country, and I remember that very well. What was right to be in art before?
You can feel it, you know.
But it changed. It changed with the generation. It changed with the regime who was in power. And my question is, do you see that change in Russia? Let's say, even in the same Ministry of Culture, I'm sure there should be some kind of change. And what kind of positive change you would see or you would like to see?
I think that in the beginning of this millennium, so many positive changes happened in Russian cultural and theater life. And after Kirill, there were a lot of very talented, really talented people which just appeared on our stage. And some theater life now in Russia is very intensive, really, and so on. And the sad thing is that like in on artistical terms, the theater life, it goes up, and then it's like collapsed with the political right turn, which happened in 2013, and then in 14, after annexation of Crimea, we found ourselves in another country. I just remembered that it was, my God, is it my country? What's going on? It was a kind of madness which was going on, and until 13, 14, some people, even in the Ministry of Culture, they were different people, absolutely. They were supporting all these new initiatives and so on. After then, it was absolutely different situation. I remember that all the documents in our Ministry of Culture, if you read, for example, them in 2011, every second word will be innovation, modernization, new forms, and so on. And then the same officials, they were sitting and tried to rewrite to change innovation to tradition, new forms to old forms, and so on and so on. So you know what happened. So now all these new people, all these new trends, they couldn't disappear immediately. Of course, you can still find a lot of interesting things, but all of them under pressure, and we are doing our things, and we understand that it's very dangerous to continue it. It's like this.
One last quick question. What are your expectations for the case of Kirill Serebrennikov? Can you predict what's going to happen? And also, probably, is there anything that the international theater community I think that they don't care about this international theater community. It doesn't mean that we don't need, we have to do anything, but a lot of things. But nobody can predict now what will happen. Really, I hope that he will get so-named suspended sentence. If you know what it means, suspended, and after it he will need to spend some years in Russia, and then yes, I think he will he will immigrate. I think I don't know, but. Maybe. I don't want to say it, but I will not be so surprised if he goes to jail. Really, I don't know, and nobody knows. Well, thank you very much, Marina Davydova, for this conversation. For you, please check our program till the end of the day. Don't miss the performance tonight of another Russian theater dramaturg and director, Ivan Verypaev, who immigrated, actually, already. He lives in Poland now, and the performance starts at 7:30 tonight here in the Kuppelsaal in TU. And enjoy the rest of the festival today and tomorrow. Thank you all.